almost all of you know me, but some of you probably graduated before I arrived. My name is Cynthia Miller-Idris. I am the ITEP director. I arrived here in 2013, but spent the first year on leave in Germany, so I know in person most of you who have been here for the last 2 years, and I've been in email correspondence with lots of others. I want to quickly introduce two of our other faculty. I know Elizabeth Warden will be here too later, but Christian Bracho, who's one of our new faculty members this year, who's just recently earned his PhD and has 10 years of teaching as a teacher of English, right? And then has been working on teacher activism in Mexico for his dissertation over the last 6 or 7 years. And Amelia Tseng, who joined us as a joint faculty member this year between Bilingual Ed and ITEP, and is a specialist on language and nation building and the connection between with language and meaning and what it means for issues of national identity and citizenship and national nation building. I think that's probably a fair enough summary. And Ophira Bansal, who many of you know, who's our program coordinator, and Jody Dixon is circulating our current research, a graduate assistant. She has some name tags for everyone. Christian is going to facilitate our discussion with alumni today. I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. He'll introduce each of you as he goes. The food will arrive sometime in the next 10 or 15 minutes, and at that point, we'll just invite you to not everybody swarm at once, but if folks can just kind of casually get up and help themselves to the food so that it stays warm. And then by the time the whole panel ends, there should be plenty of time to continue to eat and mingle, and our guests our speakers can also get some food as well. So thank you for coming. I'll share maybe just 2 other quick things about ITEP that are exciting. We continue to grow. As many of you know, we've more than doubled in size over the last couple of years. We currently have 52 students in the program, 24 graduating. We've doubled in the faculty size. There are 4 faculty now. And we've just put in a request to hire a new faculty member next year in international education development, which we are hopeful that the provost will approve. So those are all good things. We have an increasingly robust alumni presence as this meeting evidences. We are running 5 electives this semester alone, so we have increasing capacity to respond to student needs. We're running summer institutes that alumni are welcome to come join in on special topics related to program training design. So we're running a 1-credit skills institute on training and facilitation for diversity and inclusion, and one on training and facilitation for online contexts. We're also running 2 of our summer courses, our core courses this summer. So we're growing, we're expanding, we're looking for new ways to expand, hoping to build a study abroad component. We're launching increasing number of undergraduate courses, a new undergraduate major that will have a track in global education studies. And so things are expanding. It's a great place to be right now in the university when many other graduate programs are struggling and shrinking. It's really fun for us to be in one that's thriving, that has, where the field is so clearly interested in demanding our students' expertise. The only challenge we have is, I would say, is admissions. We get far more qualified applicants than we can accept. And we're trying not to grow too fast. So it's a struggle to make that argument with the university that as much as we want to grow, we do not want to become gigantic. We think it's really important that we maintain the kind of intimacy and support that we have within the program, and that enables us to kind of work in ways that we get to know the students, the master students, in ways that, for example, the 10 years that I spent at a larger university with a larger program, I didn't know my master students' names at all. And so that was primarily because I got to know my doctoral students so well. We don't have a doctoral program, but Christian was one of my doctoral students. But I'll say I'm really happy to be here, to be in a place where I get to know the master students, where I get to stay in touch with master students as you go out there in the world. So thank you for coming. Thank you to our current students for coming. We'll have plenty of time to interact afterward, but I'm going to try to stop talking for now and turn over the floor to Christian Bracho in case my children get a little chaotic. I have to intervene, so thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Happy first day of spring. Certainly feels like it outside, doesn't it? I'm really happy to be here this morning with you. As Cynthia was saying, I think what's great about this opportunity is that when you're in graduate school, I think it's really tough because you're managing all the academic learning to think about also how to grow as a professional. So I think these kind of opportunities are great chances to figure out, where you are in your academic journey is also going to be important to think about what happens next, what kind of professional opportunities should you be thinking about, and what are some of the outcomes. And I think you have such a range of speakers today. I think you'll be really happy to hear all the great things that they're doing. We're going to start off with our first panelist who's online with us, and then I'll go down the line. I'll introduce each person, reading their bio. And as we indicated to them, they're going to have a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, to talk a little bit about their journey and maybe a piece of advice they would offer. But what we're going to really try to focus in on is on the Q&A part. So you'll have a lot of time to ask questions, and also during the afterwards, we'll have a good amount of time as we're eating and finishing up brunch to also chat and interact. So think about this first part of it as a chance to sort of introduce yourselves and give some advice, and think about what would you think would be the most important thing for these students to hear about in terms of how to get from where they are to where maybe you are? And then we'll have the chance to do a lot more question and answer with the group. So the first panelist we're going to have is Jennifer Herman, who's here via webinar. Dr. Jennifer Herman joined Simmons College as a new director for the Center of Excellence in Teaching in August 2013. Her passion lies in helping adults learn. She works to develop and help others develop engaging, effective, and practical learning experiences that help adults meet their educational and professional goals. She was previously the founding director of the Center of the Advancement of Scholarship, Teaching and Learning at Niagara University, near Niagara Falls. She also worked for the School of Education here at American. She received her PhD in higher education from the University of Buffalo and her MA here at ITEP. Dr. Herman also has also worked as a writing consultant for over 10 years and has designed training programs and curriculum for the U.S. Department of State and the New York State Small Business Development Center. Throughout her professional career, she's also taught courses in writing, literature, education, and has taught written, verbal, analytical reasoning through Kaplan, University of Buffalo's Graduate School of Management, and Barron's Educational Series. She's an active scholar, and her research and publications focus on faculty development, the scholarship of teaching and learning, and online education. Dr. Herman, welcome.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, first, thank you so much. I'm excited to be able to join you virtually. I'm up in Boston right now. So my career path, I think, is a little different from what I expected it was going to take when I was in ITEP. I think it turned much more toward the training and education than the international. When I was graduating ITEP, I was offered a 6-month consulting gig with the city of High Point, North Carolina. And it was basically to do a deep dive into their K through 16 educational system and to give recommendations back to the city about how to improve career preparedness. And it was a great opportunity right after ITEP because I was able to apply a lot of the things that I learned in the program, particularly around needs assessment and training program design. And I got hooked on that, and I really wanted to find a way to make my career focused on the training program design element that I really got in the coursework. And so I ended up in the field of faculty development, which I think is a field most people haven't heard of, but it's growing very quickly. About 40% of colleges and universities have a faculty development center. And the purpose of the center is to provide training and professional development for faculty, but it's also really involved in curricular design and curricular development. So as an example, I might be observing classes and giving feedback on one day, and another day being an on-site consultant to develop a new master's in public health or redo study abroad coursework or revise the undergraduate nursing curriculum. And so I get to do a lot of a wide variety of things, and it's a very highly creative field. And so I feel like I'm constantly learning. I feel like I've gotten about a degree in every subject now, because I've observed probably about 300 college courses in the last 5 or 6 years. And so it's a great fit. I think ITEP actually prepared me much better for my work now than my PhD did. Because ITEP's coursework, I don't know if the curriculum is the same now as it was then, but I took a lot of courses that dealt with training program design, with needs assessment, non-formal education methods, and a lot of those components are things that I do on a daily basis right now and have been completely valuable and practical in what I've been doing from day to day. So I think that's an overview of what faculty development is and where I've gone. I'm currently at Simmons, and I've been here 2.5 years, and I'm really involved with grant writing, with giving professional conference presentations, with scholarships. So I'm like a faculty member without the pressure of tenure, which is wonderful.
And Jennifer,
So I know, were we taking questions now? Shall we move on?
we're going to go down the panel, but I wonder if you might have a piece of advice you would give to the group about your journey or your progress in your career.
I think for the area that I'm in, I was really lucky that I got in the field right out of ITEP, because now a PhD is really required. But it's still, if you love the stuff that you're doing in ITEP, it's a great fit if you want to be domestic. And so I think the best advice I could give is, if this is an area you're looking into pursuing, going straight to doctorate work and getting teaching experience is probably the best route. But also a lot of the work that's done in ITEP can be directly applied if people are interested in an instructional design position, which is a good entry-level position without a doctorate. So if this sort of thing sounds interesting and like a career path that is something you might be looking into pursuing, focusing a lot on developing the skill set around the training program design and the non-formal education skills is probably the direction to go.
Jennifer, thank you so much. We're going to continue down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Quick round of applause for you. Thank you. We're going to follow up with Franzi Rook. Franzi Rook is a program manager of membership at Global Ties US. At Global Ties US, she's working with over 110 organizations that engage in international exchange. Additionally, she's also responsible for designing and running exchange programs. Prior to joining Global Ties US, Franzi had worked extensively in international student recruitment, marketing, program design, and community outreach. Her work experience has spanned 3 continents in organizations such as the UN World Food Program, the HHL Leipzig Graduate School of Management, and American University. Franzi is a Fulbright scholar, and aside from German, which is her native language, she speaks English, Portuguese, and French. She received her Master in Public Administration, an MPA, with a focus on nonprofit management and leadership from Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan, and her Master's in International Training here at American. She's a board member of YPIE, Young Professionals in International Education, and you can follow her on Twitter at Franzi Rook. Thanks, Franzi.
Thank you. So the Twitter piece I have to do for work, so that's why that's in there. I didn't do Twitter before I started at Global Ties. Yeah, well, my name is Franzi. I graduated in May 2014, and basically my path since then has been with Global Ties, and I put some directories on your tables. If you don't see one, you know, grab one from a table that has one. As was said, I work with over 110 organizations on a daily basis, and they all do exchange programming. And the reason I put the directory out is because it really shows that exchange work, international work, does not only happen in Washington, D.C. You can actually do this anywhere in this country or across the world. The reason I'm really mentioning that is because I think sometimes people feel overwhelmed by DC and by the opportunities, or just the shark tank that is this city. But also, if you maybe come from a different place, the West Coast, the Midwest, you'll see that there are organizations out there that are doing this work where you can have a career and really go on to do great things. So just look this up. If you have any questions about particular organizations, let me know. Our members are hiring, as is Global Ties, by the way. So yeah, I think one piece of advice that I have is I was a full-time student and I was new to Washington, D.C., so I didn't really have many professional connections. I didn't do a whole lot of networking. So what I did basically starting my second semester was seek out assignments in class that would get me in touch with organizations, real-life clients that needed some kind of work done, and they were seeking, or they were looking for graduate students to do that work for them. So this is how I got to do an evaluation plan for an organization. I got to do job shadowing for an organization in DC that does HIV/AIDS outreach with youth. And this is how I got in touch with Global Ties, because they wanted somebody to do focus group research with international students. And hey, I was an international student, so that worked. And then once I was done with that, they really liked the product, and they asked me if I could write a marketing plan, and I said, sure. I had never written a marketing plan up to that point, but I just decided to Google, and realized it can't be that difficult, so I just did that. Basically, I'm just saying, you fake it till you make it, kind of. And then eventually, they actually had an opening for which I applied, and the benefit of that was that they had seen my work prior. I had interacted with staff, and they really felt like they knew who they were getting versus just having somebody that they've never interacted with. So I think that was definitely, for me, a big benefit of getting a start on the job. And I think initially, because my work experience has been in so many universities, I always thought I was going to be at a university in a study abroad office or international student office. But now I'm actually working with those offices, but through Global Ties, in promoting the program that I designed for them called Meet America, where I work with international students, and I actually have 6 Chinese students coming in at 2 o'clock to start that program. So it's really, you can work with international students and with the universities even without actually being at a university. And the other food for thought I have is that if you end up in a smaller organization, chances are that you get to see more of the various aspects of the organization. You probably have more responsibilities than if you started at a larger organization that has various layers of hierarchy, and if you're a program associate, you only do this, and you never see really what a program manager or a director does. We are only 10 people. When I started, we were 7. So that has definitely helped me understand more and see more and just be more involved in certain decisions. So that's my piece.
Thank you, Franzi. Just want to also note that maybe in the back would like to be closer. There's plenty of room up front, so don't be shy if you want to move up front to the front of the room. Our next guest is Maureen James, and she's ITEP 2011. She is now the Senior Program Officer in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State, working on the Tunisia Community College Scholarship Program, the Global Innovation Initiative, and Education Diplomacy. Most recently, Maureen managed the annual Education USA Forum, coordinated the budget and special projects within the Education USA branch of Global Educational Programs at ECA. Prior to starting with the department, Maureen was at the Intercultural Management Institute at American University as a program assistant for the Libya Diplomatic Training Program and worked on intercultural training. She also has previous experience working in ECA's Office of Public Affairs and Strategic Communications, as well as NAFSA. Maureen holds a master's in ITEP from here at AU, a BA in Literature from Northeastern University, and an AA in Humanities and Social Sciences from the County College of Morris. Please welcome Maureen.
Hi, I'm Maureen, and so I started ITEP in 2009, and when I got to DC, international education was kind of a career change for me. So coming from Northeastern, which is a co-op school, so you do 6 months of school, 6 months of work, and you keep flip-flopping that until you graduate. It just kind of ingrained in me that I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to school, I need the practical, need the theoretical, all of that, but I also need the practical, how do I do this? So I just kind of worked DC and did a ton of internships. I started at NAFSA, which was really great because it kind of gives you this overall view of international education in DC and kind of different sectors within that isn't just on the university level. As I mentioned in my bio, I worked for the Intercultural Management Institute, that's at AU, and I did training, and I interned there and helped them with their annual conference. And then I went and did internship at the State Department, and then I ended up just coming back to IMI and going to say hi to my old boss, and she was like, I have a job, I need you to apply for it. And I was like, I got a full load of classes. I worked at a restaurant when I was in grad school too, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna like take it easy this semester and like make sure I graduate. And she was like, no, you're gonna apply for this. And I was like, okay. And I left, and then she called me the morning it was due and was like, you didn't apply yet. And I was like, okay. She kept calling until I applied. So I applied and I got the job, and it was really great. And so it was working in an area of the world that I didn't have any experience with, North Africa and the Middle East. We worked with Libyans and teaching them. The point of the program was Libya was bolstering up their diplomatic corps, and it was kind of like, what does it mean to be a diplomat? And it was really an interesting program to be a part of. Having that experience with Libya was really great. Arab Spring happened, so then it was crisis management. So there was lots of different things within that internship that was really great, or that job. And what was wonderful was IMI kept me on even when I graduated and was still working at the restaurant and hadn't found another job. So they kept me on. It was really, really great. They were super supportive. And I actually ended up contacting people I had worked with at my internship at State, and they got me set up. I'm actually a contractor for the government. So what that means is I work for a company. Right now I work for a company called Miracle Systems. And Miracle Systems employs me, provides me with my benefits, but I work at the State Department. I sit there, I represent the State Department when I go out. I run my own program. I run the Tunisia Community College Scholarship Program that brings Tunisian youth to the United States for a year to go to community college. And it's something that's been really, really great for me at State. I took my first contract with Education USA in fall of 2011, and I was only supposed to be there for 5 months. 4 years later, I'm still at the State Department. So I kind of just took a chance on it. I remember I called my dad after the interview and was like, I don't know, it's 5 months. And he's like, how long is your current job for? And I was like, that's a good point. And he was like, just take it, see what happens. I was like, okay. So I took it, and they've been really great. And I've kind of been, State Department's a really interesting place. Sometimes you can feel kind of siloed. It's a hierarchy, obviously, it's the government. And it's like, there's John Kerry, and then there's tons of assistant secretaries, and then there's the public diplomacy sector that has an assistant secretary, and then underneath that is the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and then under that is academic programs, and then there's the Office of Global Programs, and then there's me. So it's like you kind of feel sometimes like Franzi was saying, you're in a huge organization and there's tons of people. But what's been really great about the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs is like I've jumped around a little. I started with Education USA, which is a network of advising centers around the world that help international students apply for college in the United States. I didn't have a region when I worked there, but I was able to work across regions. I event planned for them, which is something that I love. I took on the budget. I had no idea what I was doing, but they were like, do you want to do this? I was like, sure, yeah. I'll take care of $12 million, that's great. But it was a really great learning experience for me, and I just kept kind of like taking things and picking things up and being like, hey, do you need help with that? And that was something that helped me be able to get my contract extended. And then I worked for Education USA for about 3 years, and then there was an opportunity within my office that wasn't a civil service position, but it was a promotion within the contract world, and I took that contract, and now that's the one that I have right now, which is running the Tunisia program. I wanted a program experience. The only thing I can't do in my program is upload documents into a government database for grants, and I'm okay with that. But I do everything. I've been able to travel. I went to Tunisia last year. I never thought I'd go to Tunisia. I have taken on a portfolio of our Humphrey Fellowship, which brings mid-career professionals to the United States. I take on the whole Middle East and North Africa for that, which has been really great. Mentioned education diplomacy, so that's something I did where I was just kind of like, I need something else, I'm not busy enough. And within the department, you can do what are called details. They're usually only for civil service, but if you are, if you know some people and people like you, they'll do a little bit of under the table stuff. Well, they'll let you detail as a contractor, which was really great. And I worked on education diplomacy, which was one of the secretary's initiatives, where I kind of worked with all the embassies and we're talking to them about how do you come together, how do you take econ and political and public diplomacy, and how do you all incorporate education into your work plans, since we don't have the best diplomatic relations with every country in the world, but the ones that we don't, we can always talk about education because everyone wants their students to be educated in the United States. So it's something that the department really looks forward to, is having those discussions on education. So it's really great to be pulled into meetings to talk about how do you do that when you're talking with a country's economic leaders and things like that. So it's been really, really great. So I guess my piece of advice would be to stay in contact with your former supervisors and just keep talking to people. I think when you're students, you have this access to people that you don't have once you graduate. You can go talk to anybody and be like, hey, I want to hear about your job. People love to talk about themselves and what they do, especially if they're passionate about what they do. And I had an old professor tell me that when you go to do an informational interview, always ask that person if they know one or two other people that you should talk to. And you're building your network out. So that's what I would say.
I think a good piece of advice I heard there was also listen to your parents. They have
Yes.
the best advice sometimes.
Listen to Steve James.
Yeah,
You know,
true for me as well. Great. Our next guest, is it Joanne?
Joanne.
Joanne Larson, who is a ITEP 2004 grad. She grew up in rural North Dakota with a healthy dose of curiosity about the broader world. While at Tufts, she got her first taste of experiential learning via a semester abroad in Ecuador. And after graduating with a BA in International Relations, she served as a TEFL volunteer in Peace Corps Russia, Far East. Back in the US, she coordinated an after-school mentoring program for youth before moving to Santiago, Chile, where she created an English immersion program for youth. She moved to DC in 2004 to work on a master's with a double focus on training program design and K-12 Spanish education. While studying, she directed the volunteer program at Community Family Life Services and later taught Spanish at the Cesar Chavez Public Charter School for Public Policy here in DC. Is that correct? It's located here. She briefly worked as a director of training at the DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence before teaching English as a foreign language in Peace Corps, Nicaragua. Upon finishing the tour, she moved to Baltimore and is currently a technical training specialist with the Office of Overseas Programming and Training Support at Peace Corps, Washington. Her work focuses on training design, learning assessment, writing specific training objectives, building team relationships, leveraging strengths, increasing communication, and creating a strategic vision. She's a certified professional coactive coach and associate certified coach and member of the International Coach Federation. She regularly trains overseas staff and post-level senior managers in coaching skills. Please welcome Joanne.
Thanks. I think what I can share with you just a little bit about what it looks like now in my life. I came into ITEP knowing that I liked teaching, but that I wanted a little higher level of influence and power. And that led me to get a degree in teaching, but also really look at the foundation of non-formal ed and training design, advanced training design. And then in teaching a couple years in conjunction with my student teaching and degree here, I was like, okay, yeah, I like this, and by really good luck, got two positions that were really key in terms of getting my feet wet around training design. So at the DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence, where there's a current ITEPer still working there, by the way, Liz Mogg, and then as staff for Peace Corps in Nicaragua. And that was a place where I got to put it to practice of, great, what do these guys need to learn after a year in service, and how am I going to design these 3 days? And then when I moved to Peace Corps Washington, my job is to support the overseas staff that I used to be around their skills around training design and facilitation. So it's sort of a TOT level of providing resources they can use, from session plans to manuals that they can run with volunteers and trainees in country, but also to build their skills kind of in a sustainable way of what are the design principles, what's best practices in adult learning. And so I found myself pulling out so many of the same stuff from my courses of Jane Vella and Prairie and Malcolm Knowles, of like, where does this all come from? And let me just put this into easy words and nuggets for you. And what I found, even among my colleagues, is that there's always an appetite, very much to what I think part of what Jennifer's work is lots of folks are subject matter experts. They know global health, or they really know technical interventions around the environment and agriculture. They don't always have the skills to deliver their information in a way that's conducive to learners, right? How many of you have sat through the Death by PowerPoint? Right, great information, but the delivery method is really key. And so I have found that that's where my sort of personal mission is helping people facilitate learning and making it possible for people to convey what they want to convey. And so that takes many, many forms. And the other form it's taking in my life is coaching. That I see it as a way to help facilitate individual learning as opposed to in front of the classroom. And it's some of the same ideas of not stealing the learning from the learner. So instead of saying, oh, I know what your problem is, you need to do this, it's, let me ask you, what would it be like if such and such happened? Or what do you really want here? What's the real challenge for you? And so it's some of those same principles come into that relationship, which has got me kind of jazzed up about facilitating learning in so many different ways. And so I think that my career in education has been evolving and continues to evolve and grow. And my piece of advice might just be that it's okay not to know what it's going to look like. What you want to focus on is what you really love. What gets you excited about it? Is it being up in front of a room, or is it getting that student to into the semester abroad program and then, debriefing with them when they come back? Figure out what those pieces are, and dig deep in investigating and enjoying them, and then volunteer and offer them wherever you can, and you're going to find positions where that can come alive. But if you don't know for sure, like, oh, yeah, I want to work in this kind of a job, it's not as important as knowing sort of what are the pieces that light you up, and what is it that you can kind of offer.
Our next panelist is Shelley Stinelli. Shelley Stinelli is an International Relations Officer in the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Child Labor, Forced Labor, and Human Trafficking. Shelley is a program manager for a portfolio consisting of cooperative agreements with NGOs and an international labor organization in the Philippines, Vietnam, and Turkey, as well as a global program on occupational safety and health for youth. Her office works to eliminate the worst forms of child labor through research, policy engagement, and technical cooperation. She graduated from ITEP in May 2013, where she focused on human trafficking of youth in Eastern Europe. Her concentration was inspired by her Peace Corps service in Ukraine, where she worked as a TEFL volunteer from 2005 to 2007. Shelley taught English language and American Studies coursework to middle and high school students in a rural Ukrainian town, introducing new methods and authentic materials into the curriculum. She also developed curricula and conducted educational seminars and training sessions on human trafficking and HIV/AIDS issues for Ukrainian students, teachers, and health professionals. Prior to the U.S. Department of Labor, Shelley worked for Peace Corps headquarters as a country desk officer for Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. She's a graduate of Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, where she received a BA in Spanish with a concentration on American Studies. And she is from the DC area and enjoys swimming and learning new languages. Welcome, Shelley.
So thank you so much. I think I can just briefly touch on the work that I do now and how that relates to ITEP. So as was said, I graduated in May of 13, and I was still working at Peace Corps headquarters at that time, but was looking for my next opportunity because I was coming up on the Peace Corps term limit for staff working here. And I had a pretty clear focus of what I wanted to do in ITEP. I knew sort of how I wanted to translate that next, and ended up in this little known office. Actually, I really hadn't heard of it until I talked to another ITEP grad and learned about what she was doing. But it's in the Department of Labor's Bureau of International Labor Affairs. And then there's this small office, which is the Office of Child Labor, Forced Labor, and Human Trafficking. And so we really have two sides to our office. One is the research and policy side, and then the other is the technical assistance. And so that's what I do. And then I manage programs in various countries that primarily work on child labor issues, but also sometimes branch out into occupational safety and health or others. Within our technical assistance, we award the money to another organization, whether it's an NGO or the International Labor Organization or someone else, but we also play a big role in developing the projects that we ultimately fund. And so that's really where I've had the opportunity to put what I learned in ITEP into practice, because education is a big part of our programs for children, but then also for families, as well as the livelihoods assistance, in order to build a comprehensive package to address child labor or forced labor. And it isn't just obviously getting kids back in schools, but it's non-formal education, catch-up programs, training for government officials or other stakeholders who have a part in eliminating child labor in that community, province, or on the national level. So that's been a great experience, and this kind of ties into my piece of advice. But as you'll note, I was a Spanish major, and then I went to Ukraine, and then I came back and worked on the South Pacific, and then now I work with Southeast Asia. And so I think it was very important in ITEP and then in other work experience that I had previously to really build the skills that I was passionate about, similar to what Joanne said, but knew what I wanted to do generally, but then build the skills around that, whether it's training and facilitation, capacity building, et cetera, in order to be able to apply those in a variety of different contexts. And even, as I mentioned now in my office, I have an occupational safety and health project for youth, which really gets away from some of the traditional work that we've done as an office, but is still touching on some of the same issues. And I've been able to take those skills that I've learned and apply them to other areas. And I think as I graduated college and went into Peace Corps, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and that clearly hasn't exactly happened, and I've been taken in a lot of different directions. But I think that the skills that you're learning now, you can apply in a variety of fields and a variety of areas. And so some of it is just being creative and recognizing what you bring to the table, even if it is maybe something outside of what you were hoping or maybe traditionally had done in the past. But that I think has served me well. And then the flexibility to recognize new opportunities when they come along, so that you haven't necessarily pigeonholed yourself and you're branching out and learning new things as you go.
Thank you so much. Our last panelist is Dr. Tara Gargano. Is that right, Tara?
You got it.
Yeah. And she's an ITEP 2002 grad. She teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in international, transcultural, and cross-cultural communication, both online and on campus. She spent time teaching English in Japan and was the Assistant Dean of Semester at Sea for ISE, the Institute for Shipboard Education, before serving as a faculty member at American University as well as the University of Maryland. She worked with the Intercultural Management Institute to organize conferences and conduct trainings for expatriates and their families, graduate students, and foreign nationals. Throughout her career in international education, she has managed dozens of study abroad programs and institutional collaborations worldwide. Please welcome Dr. Gargano.
So I can echo so many of the sentiments that many of you up here already shared, and I think that career paths definitely take an unpredicted turn as you start to evaluate what options there are and how passionate you are about certain things. So when I left ITEP, one of the first positions that I took was as the Assistant Dean on Semester at Sea. That was in 2004. And if I had to give you one piece of advice, and I can start with that, it would definitely be to go out into the world and travel. Not only just travel, but try and engage with people in a manner that allows you to build those professional skills in different contexts. So as much as I think the networking is important, the learning another language is important, finding what you're passionate about, I think being able to better understand some different contexts in which you might find yourself involved in internationally across cultures, I think is really a key part of this program. And so I was very excited to hear that there's a study abroad component that might be being developed with regards to ITEP. And so if those opportunities present themselves through consulting work, through study abroad, I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of those. I think that's very important. I currently serve as the program director and faculty advisor for the largest grad program in the School of International Service, and that's the MAIR-MIS online graduate program. So we have about 250 students. So much like Jennifer here, I work with faculty, a pool of over 100 faculty, to try and share best practices about teaching online to support our students and to support our faculty. So that's a huge part of what I do now. It wasn't a huge part of what I did during my time with ITEP, but over the years it's become much more important in the work that I do. I've taught for over a decade as well at a community college, Howard Community College in Columbia, Maryland. I teach sociology classes, introductory sociology classes, classes on the sociology of education, classes on social change. And so it's really interesting for me because I never went to school to either get a PhD or to get an MA because I wanted to be a tenured professor, which is I think what a lot of people anticipate is the reasoning behind getting a doctorate degree. But the reason for that is that I wanted to be involved in higher education. I was really passionate about that, but I felt I needed that academic credential in order to be taken seriously in the field and to do what I wanted to do. So through my career, it's had more of a academic progression perhaps than I anticipated, but all of the training classes that I took, the needs assessment, the training program design, all of that's been very helpful for me as I think about how I approach creating and structuring courses and working with students in a much more interactive manner than maybe some other faculty in the schools that I teach have done in the past. And that's been a very positive thing for me because I've learned so much from them, but also I get a lot of positive feedback from them as well. So I think that's really helpful. I can't think of anything else, so I'll keep it short. There you go. You're welcome.
We're going to take some questions and open up the dialogue, and we'll get the food ready to be served shortly. So any questions from the audience? Yes, please, in the middle.
Thank you so much to all the there we go. Thank you so much to all the panelists that have come. To all of you, what would be one thing that you didn't do while you were at ITEP that you wish you had done?
I think for me, at least, it echoes the sentiment that some of you have shared as well, is I didn't do as much networking as I could have. I live in the Baltimore area. I don't live in DC. So for me, it was more a matter of coming into work and leaving the city. So I didn't spend a lot of time in this area developing those professional networks or time outside of work engaging in other professional opportunities through, a capstone experience, through an internship. Because I did work full-time at AU while I did my degree, which is the benefit of tuition remission and not leaving with a wealth of debt at the same time. My time was spent here going to work and engaging in academics. So I think the networking or the opportunity to develop some of those skills more in the community is something that I wish I would have done more, and certainly echoes the advice that you all have given.
Yeah, and to operationalize that, I would say, 2 informational interviews a semester. Find one of us that you think like, oh, I kind of want to do something that you're interested in, or something in your bio. Would you connect me with somebody? And make it a 20-minute telephone interview. I'm a student. It's exactly that. You got access right now. And so I think I didn't know what exactly it could look like, and I think that just innocuous information interviews of like, well, what does your job look like? What do you love about it? And how'd you get there? Good. I don't want to do that one. What about you over here, right? Or like, oh, I want to be you. Great. How could I get closer? And like, oh gosh, I could use an intern. Just go out and explore, just for the sense of your own learning. And the bonus is you're going to get networking and jobs out of it.
And that's actually for the Meet America program that I run. We do get the students in front of potential employers and internship providers, and you'll be surprised how easy it is to get an appointment at the Wall Street Journal, the World Bank, and all of these places where I as a student have never been. So of course now as a professional I've totally joined the group for those meetings. But it really is, I can absolutely underscore that. Now as a professional I do an informational interview probably once a month for students. So definitely some people have caught on to that, to the importance of that. But yeah, I mean, how else would you know that Global Ties is hiring, for example? Because I'm sure we're not on your radar as, ooh, let's check the website and see. So that's really, how you hear about things. And then you connect on LinkedIn and do the whole follow-up.
Great advice. Anybody else? Good, Cynthia.
Do I have to speak into the microphone? Yeah.
I have a question that came up last year that I thought was really helpful, which is about salary negotiation at the starting point. Something we've been working on in the capstone course and as part of the kind of professionalization to do a salary negotiation workshop. And particularly what we know about how women don't negotiate, that we are a highly gendered field. But also that the education field is undervalued and that we're not looking at really high salaries. One of the things that was really useful last year is that our panelists talked a little bit about, what is a realistic range, right? So without sharing any personal information, right? But so when you look at who you're hiring, when you're looking at your peers going in, I think a lot of our students in the current cohort, and when you're a student, you don't really know, are we looking at $45,000? Are we looking at $85,000? What's the right and how can you, how can you come into a new position advocating for yourself, but also not coming across as a kind of entitled millennial that employers are afraid of, right? So any suggestions you might have for our students on that point would be helpful.
Well, government-wise, it's very easy to find out what people make. It's all public information. But for me as a contractor, I don't necessarily, my grade might be this, but I'm not necessarily going to make that because the department is giving a company money, a bulk amount of money. I only see a portion of that, and then the company gets the rest of that money. So when I got the position that I had, when I first went in, I didn't do a negotiation. I was like, oh my God, I have a job. And I was like, pay me whatever. And then with this new contract, I was moving to a new company. So it was the first time I negotiated the salary. So I did some research. I found out what the civil servant would be making at my grade and time. And I went in that, and it was extremely uncomfortable, but I went for it, and I got it, and that was really great. So I think it's taking that time, doing a little bit of research. In the government world, it's easy because everything is out there. But and I've also learned that talking about money is uncomfortable, but it's something that we all need to do because we all need to live. DC is extremely expensive and getting more expensive, so it's kind of that thing. And I have had people ask me kind of what I make sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, and then I'm like, no, that's okay. And it's giving a range. I'm not going to tell them to the penny, but I think it's an okay question to ask too when you're talking with people.
Not specific.
So I think I can chime in on this one. I hope everyone can still hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So something I learned about higher education I didn't know when I first got started is every August, the Chronicle of Higher Education publishes salary data. So it's not specific to each university or college, but it tells you by position what the range is overall. And I found that's been very helpful to get a sense of where the ballpark is. In faculty development in the subfield I was talking about, a normal, an entry-level position for someone who may recently have a doctorate or is just getting started is probably about, say, 50 to 80,000 in that range. But it depends by institution type. So doctoral level institutions generally pay 20 to 30,000 more than liberal arts or community colleges. But it's difficult because I don't think within the field we have a good sense of what normal is. We try to look at that annual data, but I've seen applications for positions come out. I've been contacted by recruiters from time to time, and it varies pretty widely. But I think the higher education side is probably one of the higher paying positions I've seen come out.
Thank you. Shelley, you want to chime in?
Yeah, Yeah, it's not specific necessarily to salary negotiation, but I think when you're applying to jobs, and I'm thinking also kind of government-wide or wise because that's where I am, but it's not the time to be modest about your skills. I think it's the time, and it's very difficult, I think, sometimes to promote yourself and really say, like, I have these skills and this is what I know how to do really well. But when you're rating yourself on applications for the government or anywhere else, obviously don't lie, but push yourself as far as you feel comfortable going and really try and rate yourself well and be bragging about yourself in that sense because you do have the skills. And I think sometimes it's easy to kind of say, well, I'm really not an expert in this. But if you can, make a good case for yourself, or you could explain to someone kind of with a straight face how you are an expert and what you know, then I think promoting yourself will go a long way toward, putting yourself at a higher advantage for, a salary.
And I think in my case, in the nonprofit world, it was the same thing. How much can you ask for? I did my research with glass door, glass ceiling, something like this, pay scale. So you can sort of enter the skills that the position requires, and the level that it's at, and then they're gonna give you a range that organizations in the area pay. Also based on private, nonprofit, and like other entities. So you can really sort of see what the range is that you should be asking for. I was offered an amount and then went back and said, well, I was really looking at this and that, and they said without batting an eye, okay, sure. Which was for me the moment like, oh, I should have asked for more. But it was this like being uncomfortable. I was proud of myself for even asking for more, but when they came back so quickly, I was like, yeah, sure, we can do that. I was like, that's that moment, but at least I asked for more. But when I'm working with our interns in terms of, what can they ask for, I think it's really important to look at, is this truly entry level where technically a bachelor is enough, but because we live in DC, everybody with a master's degree is going to apply? Or is this a position where really you need a master's degree and it's not necessarily entry level? You need, a couple of years of experience to really do this, because that's also going to make a difference. We are an organization where if it's an entry level position, we only hire people who are entry level. So we would not consider somebody with a master's degree for a position that would only require a bachelor's, because we do want younger folks to have a chance. But that also means salary-wise that if you start with us at a program manager level, which requires a master's degree, you are automatically in a different pay scale. So if you got questions, come talk to me later. But yeah, it's very uncomfortable. But if you do your research beforehand, if you know what the industry standard is, you can certainly ask for that. And also keep in mind that the money thing is only part of the conversation once they actually are making you an offer. So once the organization said that they want you, which means they've done all their work, they've screened all the candidates, they want you. And they're not really willing to go back through the whole process just because you asked about salary. So, it's the worst thing they can say is, no, we can't pay this. And then, you lower your standards. But, definitely negotiate.
I would just add that not everybody has the same degree of shyness. So my husband had mentioned over the last couple of months, he's kind of feels like he should be earning more and wants to have a conversation about it. Monday morning, on the way to work, he's like, I'm gonna ask for a raise today. And I was like, what? Where was the 5 days of solid verbal agony and like, how should I do this and role play with me and all of that? And he's like, I'm gonna ask for a raise today. And he was a little bit nervous, and I checked in how it had gone afterwards, right? But like, he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I deserve it. I need it. I'm ready. And he walked out with like, I can rewrite my job description, submit it to HR, so just, not everybody has those feelings. And so again, ask the people in your life who you trust and you see as mentors, how did you do it? What should I do? And in Spanish they say, dejar la pena, like let go of the embarrassment.
And can I just build on to that? Track very carefully your accomplishments, whether it's in your job or elsewhere, so that when you do go to ask, you have that well documented and you can just pull from that as opposed to trying to put something together when it actually is time.
Yeah, the HR folks are gonna need proof. So give them the proof, especially if they're like, well, it depends on your previous salary, like the government does. Well, my previous salary was a 4-day-a-week job. That's not equivalent to a 40-hour week. I had a lot of there was a lot of support they had to go through for that. So just be there. The worst they can say is no, but they already want you. And you're not usually talking to the same person who's going to be your supervisor. So that supervisor's like, give them the money, and the HR person's like, well, I'm not sure, right? So
Don't make sure that you're looking at your benefits package too.
yeah.
Sometimes those can, if you really look at what you're getting, technically you are making something that somebody else is making. Like you're going up a level, whether it's transit. That's what I don't know about you, but that's what I love about the government. I haven't paid for the metro in like forever. And that's one thing that I look for, because I'm like, when you think about it, and I was like trying to calculate it out, I was like, that's quite a bit of money. And that's just something that they're giving me, which is not my salary, so it's really great.
It's also, I think, just doing the math and like looking at your actual expenses and just knowing how much money you'll need to break even at the end of the month. I think that's also a big revelation, because it really shows you, how much are you spending. And then if you think about student loans, you maybe want to save or have a savings account at some point in your life. All these things that definitely comes into play. And the problem is if you start really low, you start your salary history low, it's going to be difficult in the next job and the job after to really go that much higher. So just, keep that in mind and like don't lowball yourself too much. But also, again, the broad world of the US, I know that I'm making more than some of the executive directors within our network. But that is because DC is expensive, and if you live somewhere else, you don't need as much money to pay rent. I mean, you can actually own a place. It's incredible. Whereas, here in DC, well, yeah. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. One of our interns just got a job in New York City. She's actually making more money than I am, but it's New York City. She's never gonna see that much at the end of the day, just because it's so expensive and there's so many taxes taken out of it. So, just keep that in mind where, like regionally, where you're applying, because there might be different levels in terms of pay.
Other questions from the audience? Yeah, please. Ryan.
Hi, thank you guys for all coming and sharing your thoughts with us again. My question is a little bit more towards Franzi, but anyone can ask this. As an international student, how did you find the process afterwards, especially of trying to get visas after that point? Because that's one of my main concerns now, being an international student 2 years down the line. I would like to work here or potentially somewhere else. And do any of you guys, but mainly Franzi, do you guys have advice for that?
It was painful. There's no other way to put it, which is why I really try to get that practical experience in, so that I could actually say, I did something and here's what I did and here are my contacts in the US, because all my references up to that point would have been in Germany and in Africa. So that was one thing. We also need to know that nobody understands what your true status is, and people either think you're illegal or, it's like they just don't know how to deal with you, and they think you want a green card, and it's just a really difficult process. So it's a lot of education, and I actually did an informational interview with the president of Global Ties, and part of that informational interview was me explaining the international student status and what an OPT is, so basically the 1 year of work that you can do after you graduate. And so I sort of had her educated prior to them even considering bringing me on, but then it was also part of the interviews that I did, to just bring up the process. But truth be told, I mean, I had a number of interviews where everything went well up until the point where they realized I'm an international student, and that's where things fell apart. And it's difficult to not take that personal, because if everything's great, why is there such a big hurdle? But it really is, I think, all about educating the other side. Eventually, I actually looked at consulting firms and research organizations where you don't have a cap for the H-1B. So there was also another process. So there's that OPT process of just finding finding a place that is willing to give you a chance for only a year and just seeing, what you can do. But then the H-1B, I mean, that was a whole nother ballgame. I thought I knew what that process was, but yeah, it was a lot more difficult, or not more intense in terms of documentation than I really thought it was going to be. And that's when you have to stop being shy, because there are going to be documents in the office, public record, that states your salary and everything. And anyone in the office, be it a delivery person or your supervisor, can just go there anonymously, write on this sheet of paper and say, no, she should not get this. And this piece of paper is hanging in your office for 4 weeks. And it's like every day you walk by and you're hoping that nobody is signing this thing. And because you never really truly know people's attitudes towards internationals. But I mean, we can talk after that a little bit maybe. But overall, I'm glad it worked out. I think I'm one of the examples for H-1B where you don't have to be a software developer in Silicon Valley and still get that particular visa. But it was definitely not as easy as I was thinking it was going to be. So, yeah.
We still have time for a few more questions, but just a couple of housekeeping items. If any of you would like to go ahead and get some food, feel free. And also the restrooms are through the exit over here on my left to your right. But we'll take a few more questions, but again, feel free to stand up and get food if you like. Other questions from the group? Yeah, Sinead, please.
Hi, thank you for coming. For those of us that are, I guess, looking for jobs, and we're all in ITEP and we're in DC, so there's just so many of us. Were there any things that maybe when you were applying for jobs, and things that you did that you think maybe set you apart, or any advice for those of you that do work with hiring? Anything that you think that because a lot of us have traveled, we're all in ITEP, so traveling, a lot of us speak another language, even if it's just conversationally. So is there anything that you think that might really, or anything that you think, like you said, to check and see if they know anyone that maybe we can talk to about anything? Is there any advice that you would have for that?
So I think most recently the work that I do online has kind of expanded the possibilities for a lot of people when you think about job searching or even networking. I know a lot of us have said that it's really important to do those informational interviews and to do that networking here in the DC area. With the courses that we teach online, with the platforms that we have Jennifer joining us here online as well. I think the idea of doing some of those informational interviews or even applying for jobs that aren't necessarily in the DC area that you might be very interested in, that you can have those meetings or interviews online is something that I think is a recent development within our field in particular, whether it's overseas or whether it's domestic. So I think the opportunity to take advantage of some of those technologies and kind of expand the scope of what those terrains of possibilities might be for us professionally, I think is a significant thing to consider when you start to find what your passion is or get a better understanding of where you might want to be professionally.
I would say there are a few programs actually with State Department. So there's the PMF, which Presidential Management Fellowship. That's something like where you have to take a test. You can take it at the end of your graduating year, and I think you can take it the year after you graduate. And that's something just like put your hat in the ring, apply for it, because then you can get this fellowship at state, and you have the opportunity to kind of bounce around bureaus within the government and even agencies, and it's a good way to kind of feel your way out in the government. But it's like, it doesn't cost you anything. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, at least you tried. Something else is foreign service. The first round is free. Take the test. It's a long process, so it's just something, keep your options open in what you're applying for. And something that was brought up earlier, applying for, I know for me when I came out of grad school, I was like, okay, I'm entry level, but I'm actually not, because I had so much experience in kind of thinking about those transferable skill sets that you have, and maybe going out on a limb and applying for some of the stuff that might be a little bit higher than entry level that maybe some of your other in the cohort aren't applying for. So it's like I would kind of play the field and put in a lot of different things. I think sometimes people that I knew in ITEP and myself, we were so siloed in what we wanted to do that those were the only jobs I applied for, and I didn't think about kind of things, the outliers that might have brought me into other areas or gotten me back to that first point. So.
And I think also if you see a job description, just because it said required for this position, doesn't necessarily mean it's actually required for the applicants. Like when we screen applications, a lot of it is, doesn't matter if the person has 5 years of experience or 4 or 3.5. So if the position looks like something you can do and something you're interested in, it's definitely worthwhile applying. And I know it sucks up a ton of time, but don't not apply just because there's a requirement in there that you can't fulfill. Because I think those, as job descriptions as these things are written up, it's the ideal candidate, it's the perfect candidate that may or may not exist. So just keep that in mind.
I would echo, it's important to apply to the highest level that you think you can do. I interview and hire people on a regular basis, and most of the people who get rejected are people who are extremely overqualified for the position. And I wish there would be more people that would just have a few years experience coming out of a master's program to do the higher level work, because then I know they can grow in the position. And so I definitely shoot high, because I think it's easy to underestimate yourself when you're just coming out of the master's.
And I would just add, I would echo your question back to you, which was what sets you apart? And the answer is you. Right, so don't forget that, you're in DC, everyone's international, everybody travels, lots of people have this ITEP degree or this education perspective, except not, because your flavor of it is entirely different than her flavor of it, than his flavor of it. And so to bring into the interview, what are you bringing? From the hiring perspective, I'm looking for skills and knowledge, but really I'm looking for the right attitudes and who's gonna fit into our team. Because I'm gonna have to talk to you 40 hours a week and work on projects under stress, right? And so figuring out what you love, what you're good at, where you want to grow, and demonstrating how you're able to grow, bring that in. Because that's the other variable that often we forget about in terms of, I'm different than she is, and we're gonna be different fits for different jobs. It's not as competitive as it might seem on paper.
I think, can I just add quickly to that too? I mean, yes, like shooting for the highest level possible and going for that, but also looking for opportunities that will help you get your foot in the door. So whether it's a 5-month contract or like I was a temp at Peace Corps headquarters, but I was in the building, and that opened up a range of possibilities that were only being advertised internally. And because I was already there and in the building and hired, when a vacancy opened and they needed someone quickly, I was there and could take advantage of that. So making sure that you also have that balance of not, kind of setting aside opportunities that aren't quite the ideal and aren't exactly what you want, but might get your foot in the door, and then you can prove yourself and then move on from there.
I just want to also echo that something I think Franzi and Maureen both said was that if there's skills you don't know, you can learn very quickly if you go online and you just get a book like learning how to do budgets or whatever it is, like that some of these things that may not be in your wheelhouse can be easily picked up, because since you're here, I think you have an ability to pick up new skills and new ideas pretty quickly. So I think if you see something in the application you think you can't do, you can probably still stretch yourself a lot to get to that, to find out how to learn that skill pretty quickly. So I think that's good advice here about being flexible and not selling yourself short just because you're missing one thing on the application doesn't mean you're not qualified. I think because of the time, I'm going to ask that we maybe just wrap up now, and then if you have questions for the individual people, you can go ahead and approach them. But I think because we want to have time for lots of conversation, lots of dialogue, we'll go ahead and close the panel now, but give you plenty of time to interact until 1 o'clock when the brunch will be over. Thank you again to the panel for all your time.